Welcome back, everyone. As you can see from the screen, the title today is The Falling Fertility Rate in Muslim Countries Causes, Implications, and Future Prospects. I'm really making this video in response to a continued argument I hear in Muslim circles that Islam is the fastest growing religion. As we all know, this is largely based on birth rates and not through conversion, because actually, in many countries, the apostasy rate is multiple times larger than any conversions to Islam. So, with that out of the way, let's just consider the main topics are today. So, I'm going to be taking an overview of fertility rates in Muslim countries, factors contributing to declining fertility rates, cultural and societal influences, raw data, and I think this part is especially relevant, implications of declining fertility rates and future prospects. So, can Muslims really argue that Islam is the fastest growing religion? Well, if they're basing it on the birth rates of 1965, they would be right if they were living in 1965, but things have changed a lot in the last 60 years, and though still relatively, the fertility rates are by and large higher in Muslim countries, but not in every case. That's all changing, and things are equalizing across countries, as we'll see. So, an overview of fertility rates in Muslim countries now. So, traditionally, there have been high fertility rates in Muslim countries, typically anywhere from 6 or 7 children per average family. The metric that's used is the average fertility rate, which means the average number of children that a typical woman would have in society. And of course, factored into this number is the fact that some women don't have children, and obviously other women have maybe a larger number than this average fertility rate. It's all factored in. Um, the key thing to note in the trends is that there are declining fertility rates across the board in Muslim countries. Recent decades have seen a gradual decline in fertility rates due to improved education and healthcare access. Now, I think I've been very moderate by calling it gradual decline. I think when you see the figures, considering it's only over a period of 60 years, the decline is actually quite alarming. And there's no end in sight in terms of the trend. We haven't hit the bottom yet in any of these countries. We don't know how low it can get. In some terms of socio-economic factors, key factors include urbanization, education, and employment opportunities that have significantly impacted fertility rates. There's definitely a proportional correlation between urbanization and lower fertility rates, which means that in a population, the higher the percentage of people who are living in urban areas, typically the lower the average fertility rate is. And you tend to find larger families out in rural areas, you tend to find smaller families in urban areas. And this is for a number of factors. Some of them are financial, but I would argue that opportunity costs is often overlooked. A lot of people who are involved in policy making focus in on the economics. They look at the financial costs of rearing kids, and there have been many countries that have spent billions trying to encourage women to have more children and failed despite offering lots of financial incentives. But what they're forgetting is that city life, urban life, offers many opportunities, including a career path, um, and lots of other things to be doing with yourself other than having children. And those opportunity costs, I think, are much more significant than even the impact of economics in all of this. And this is perhaps my personal opinion based on the data, but I think the data would support me in that, especially if you look at places like Japan and South Korea and China, where they've tried to get the fertility rate back up, and they've tried everything, and they've not made any noticeable difference on the fertility rate. So, current fertility rates and statistics. So, fertility rates, um, if we look at the overview, recent studies indicate that many Muslim countries have fertility rates below the replacement level of 2.1, a significant trend in demographics. So, for those who are not familiar with this, 2.1 is the number of children on average a woman would need to have in order to keep the population stable at a certain level. If it goes below 2.1, it leads to a population decline. The replacement level of 2.1 children per woman is crucial for maintaining population stability. Many countries are now below this threshold, including Muslim countries. So much for Islam being the fastest growing religion. So, in terms of country specific data, key statistics from various Muslim countries illustrate the changing fertility landscape impacting population growth and societal structures. If you look at the absolute numbers, you can see that the populations of Muslim countries are going up, and you might be thinking, well, it's going to keep going up and up and up. But actually, if you look at the percentage increase per year, it's actually leveling off because the average woman is having less children. And this is continuing to lower with every passing decade. Now, there's obviously regional variation in fertility rates, and this can be due to cultural influences. Cultural beliefs and practices significantly impact fertility rates across different regions in Muslim countries. Another variation is economic development, which also affects fertility rates, as more developed regions often have lower fertility rates due to better access to resources. In more developed countries, there tends to be more urbanization, which typically leads to a lower fertility rate. Plenty of alternative opportunities other than having lots of children. So that obviously has an impact. Access to education is also a key factor. Access to education, particularly for women, plays a crucial role in determining fertility rates in Muslim countries. As we've seen in another videos, it's true still that Arabs don't tend to read much, but despite that, they do get access to an education, and the more educated they become, they typically have less children, the same as in other parts of the world. So, factors contributing to declining fertility rates: economic development, urbanization. I think this is a big one. Urbanization significantly influences family planning practices as urban lifestyles often prioritize career and education. A study into the fertility rates in Brazil, for example, in the 1970s, found that when electricity was introduced in many regions, the fertility rate dropped. And the reason being is that people watched more TV and had less sex. And so this led to a fertility rate drop. Um, Economic growth effects also have an impact. As economies grow, living costs increase, leading families to opt for fewer children and focus on quality of life. And thirdly, in urban settings, lower birth rates are often observed due to higher living costs and lifestyle choices. I would categorize these as financial costs on the one hand and opportunity costs. So if you're in a big city, you've got lots of things you can be doing. You can go to the theatre, you can go to cinema, you can do sports, you can visit places, etc., etc. Whereas if you're out in the countryside, you have less things to do. You might be more inclined to have a big family in those circumstances. Education and women's empowerment is obviously a big factor. Education empowers women by providing with the knowledge to make informed decisions about their lives and futures. They typically are able to articulate what they want for themselves. They can stand up for themselves more with greater education, etc. And there's also an impact on fertility decisions as a result. Increased education leads women to consider their fertility choices more carefully, impacting family planning and timing. And obviously, the more educated women become, the more likely they are to pick a career and postpone having children until they've had an opportunity to have a career. And connected with that, of course, is workforce participation. Higher educational attainment promotes greater participation of women in the workforce, enhancing economic independence. And all of these factors together tends to lead to a fall in the fertility rate, even in Muslim countries. And if we look briefly now at cultural and societal influences, changing family structures and values are evident. Modernization has resulted in the emergence of smaller family units, often consisting of parents and one or two children. And this is true in North Africa and the Middle East, the same as in Europe and America. Perhaps the onset of this was delayed, let's say, in North Africa and the Middle East and in the Far East, but it's definitely trending towards that. There are also evolving family roles. So family roles have evolved with both partners often participating in income generation and household responsibilities, which obviously tends to lead to having less children. And then there's societal transitions. Shifts in family structures reflect broader societal transitions, including changing gender roles and economic factors. So let's get on to the core of this video, which is the raw data. You could argue with what I've presented so far, but the raw data speaks for itself. So we're going to look at uh, various countries. These are randomly picked, and in fact, quite a broad spectrum of countries that I've chosen here. Um, we're going to compare the fertility rate of from 1965 to 2025, just to kind of get an idea of the trend. In each case, you will notice that the difference is always a negative one. The numbers go down. So if you take Iran here, and I've given you a visual representation, it goes from 7.22 in 1965 to 1.65, which is a drop of 6 children per family on average. If you look at Iraq, then it has seen a drop from 7.02 to 3.17, which is a drop of 4 children on average. Saudi Arabia has seen also a significant drop from 7.66 to 2.29. And I think looking at it visually, you can see that while the families were very large in 1965, the families now in Saudi Arabia are trending very much like a typical Western country. Still slightly higher, maybe, than some countries in Europe, say, but it's still trending in the same direction. If you look at Pakistan, then 6.8 and then 3.5 in 2025. So in just 60 years, the average number of children that women have is three less. Okay. And that works out at a half a child per decade. That's the way it's trending. So you do the maths. Even though it's above the fertility rate currently, you roll it on another couple of decades, and it will eventually go below the replacement rate. Now, what's in Pakistan's favor at the minute is the fact that the population is still relatively young. So the impact of a falling fertility rate won't be evident for a number of decades, but Pakistan is a bit of an outlier. Most Muslim countries will see the impact of all of this much sooner. Now, if you look at Afghanistan, it's gone from 7.3 to 4.66, which is a drop of 3 children per family. Azerbaijan has gone from 5.79 to 1.67, which is a drop of 4. And then Bahrain, huge drop here, really, from 7.03 to 1.78, which is a drop of 5. Then if we look at UAE, they had a fertility rate in 1965 of 6.5, and now it's 1.21, which is a drop of 5. And just to note that of these four countries, three of them, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, and UAE, are well below the replacement rate. Okay, 2.1 it should be to keep a country's population stable. Now, if we look at Morocco, it went from 6.93 to 2.18, which is a drop of about 5 children on average. Algeria also has had a dramatic drop from about 7.71 to 2.67, which is again about a drop of 5 children. Tunisia has had a similar drop of about 5 children, 7.11 to 1.8. And Egypt has had also quite a dramatic drop from 6.39 to 2.71. So, what are the implications of declining fertility rates for Islam? Well, the argument is that Islam is the fastest growing religion, but Islam's leading argument is already dated. Islam's main argument for its validity, that it is the fastest growing religion, has been based solely on birth rates, but these are falling rapidly. More people leave Islam than voluntarily convert to Islam each year. But on top of this fertility rate issue, there's also the issue of apostasy. Apostasy is rampant in every Muslim country due to a number of factors: growing secularism, economic opportunities, better education, and easy access to information about the origins of Islam. In America, the apostasy rate is about 23%. So even if Muslims have 4 children on average, 1 in 4 of them will apostatize by the time that they are an adult. So, what are the future trends and prospects? Well, the trends for Muslim fertility rates are further downwards. Trends will continue to go below the replacement rate. Muslim countries will increasingly have fertility rates that are no different from Western countries, with a direct correlation with increased urbanization. And what about incentives for families? Providing financial incentives or tax benefits for families to help promote higher birth rates and stabilize population levels have not worked by and large in any country. City life offers other opportunities other than having children, and increasingly people postpone having children to focus on their careers. So, in conclusion, I would argue that Islam isn't the fastest growing religion any longer. In fact, Islam can boast it has the fastest shrinking fertility rates in the world. Thank you for watching.